This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
I haven't shouted them out in a long time, but I'm going to now that recording's on, because I'm using software from Rogue Amoeba to record this. I use Audio Hijack, which I'm not getting paid to shout this out, but I love them, all right? If you are on a Mac and you have any problems with your audio recording, Audio Hijack is this bulletproof piece of software with just like drag and drop squares that you can connect things together with lines. And it works. And it records audio directly to the hard drive. There's no after buffering process. If my computer dies, I'll have all the audio up to the point in which it dies. Right? I won't lose anything. I can record multiple tracks independently. I combine that with Loopback, which lets me route audio all over my system in a way that you can't do natively on most computers. It's very powerful with audio. If I could do the same thing with video, we would be a video podcast. But I don't have Rogue Amoeba really lets me do, and I've been using their software, I think, since the beginning. I don't think I've always recorded with Audio Hijack. I edited with Audacity. I edited with Audacity for a little while, but I always recorded with Audio Hijack because I could record me and Patrick's audio separately. And then Loopback lets me stream live while also recording, and lets me split the audio stream in two and doesn't impair either stream. So anyway, I was nerding out about how much I love the software before recording, and I wanted to shout them out. Yeah, that's it.
I don't use Macs, but I do like tools that are built well and don't need to be replaced every couple of years or constantly worked around. Like, it is truly a joy to find something that just is solid.
Yes, I was saying how wonderful Rogue Amoeba was because of how awful some of the Discord, OBS, other software that I'm dealing with, and just the constant updates and Mac updates and everything that people are having trouble keeping up with. Yeah. Because they make big bloated software, and it's hard to update.
Right, yeah, because when you try to do everything in all capacities and be an all-in-one, you're not doing everything well. Like, there's a lot of...
Speaking of Suian Sanchez as the
Emerald Sea. Right?
Do you like that transition? I thought that was pretty good.
That was good. A good transition into Chapter 1 of Knife of Dreams.
The best of all the chapters. Malicious wind in this one?
Yes.
Right? Like, this is the first time the wind is actually, like, kind of evil and kills people.
Yeah, like, literally kills people. Like, there have been bubbles of evil, and there have been weird coincidences.
Sure.
But now the definition, or the difference between the two is starting to get blurrier. And we're starting to get weird coincidences that are so coincidental they're more like bubbles of evil, but they're not at the same scale of a true bubble of evil.
Mm-hmm. Well, and this is what's bringing Rand power, right? Because as the pattern becomes evil, Rand brings balance to the pattern. So back when the pattern was relatively neutral, evil and good things happened around Rand in equal parts. Now that basically the Dark One is putting his finger on the scale, and we're getting all of these bubbles of evil and bad events and corruption, Rand gets to walk around and say, hey, only good things are going to happen around me because I'm the balance to all the bad things that are happening from the Dark One. And so that's when he gets to go around and, a lot of the miracles that are occurring around him is sort of his rebalance to Viren nature. And it's sort of like, it's almost like the Dark One didn't want to break free that much, because the more he breaks free, the more powerful Rand gets as the Dragon Reborn, Avatar of the Creator, whatever you want to call him. Not really Avatar of the Creator, because that's Nakomi. Whatever. Get into it later.
Put a pin in that.
Yeah, but as a representative of the antagonist of the Dark One, he becomes more powerful the more the Dark One breaks free and influences the pattern. And I feel like that's, there's a reason why the Dark One waits a little bit, even though he could break the seals at any time.
Right. Aside from just the narrative power of having it be a progressive descent into madness rather than just snapping on over to the final boss battle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, sure. There's an in-world reason for it too, in addition to narrative craft.
You know what? You don't put your strongest defenses at the outside of your castle. You put your weakest ones to get rid of most of the, like, casual wanderers. And then if people get past that, you put slightly more serious defenses. Right? You know what? Level progression works. Okay? We're just going to stick with it. A video gamification of the world is 100% how it should go.
Yeah, I see nothing wrong with that at all. Moving on.
Moving
on. Yeah, should I read us in?
I think you need to, yeah.
Because there's so much, beautiful prose, I wasn't going to read all of it, just the first 2 paragraphs, because it just keeps going and going and going. So, I'm no Kate Redding. Oh, and this chapter is When Last Sounds, and our symbol is the dream terangrial, because dreams, obviously. The wheel of time turns, and ages come and pass, leaving memories that become legend. Legend fades to myth, and even myth is long forgotten when the age that gave it birth comes again. In one age, called the third age by some, an age yet to come, an age long past, a wind rose above the broken mountain named Dragon Mount. The wind was not the beginning. There are neither beginnings nor endings to the turning of the wheel of time. But it was a beginning. Born beneath the glow of a fat, sinking moon, at an altitude where men could not breathe, born among writhing currents heated by the fires inside the ragged peak, the wind was a zephyr in the beginning, yet it gained in strength as it rushed down the steep, rugged slope. Carrying ash and the stench of burning sulfur from the heights, the wind roared across the sudden, snowy hills that reared from the plains surrounding the impossible height of Dragon Mount, roared and tossed trees in the night. And then the wind goes all over the place and does all kinds of cool stuff. And it's just excellent Robert Jordan prose for that opening sweeping shot from the helicopter in the movie.
And we see a lot of people dealing with the after effects of this wind, right? As Suian's wandering around. There's deaths, there's damage, yeah.
So this wind is basically described as like a Chinook or something, right? Where you've got wind descending down from a high altitude and it gathers strength as it goes because the air is compressing and heating as it goes down.
Shit does roll downhill, yeah.
Yeah, and it accelerates because of the change in altitude, and you end up with like cars getting tossed and trees getting ripped apart, and like that does happen under certain conditions coming down. The Santa Ana winds, same kind of deal. It's a topography change that makes that happen. So Robert Jordan is describing that. He's just, plopping it on top of his stratovolcano and blasting it right through the Aes Sedai camp and then into the tower, because this is very much the Dark One has tipped the scales to fuck with the Aes Sedai, right? I feel like he's very allegorically saying, like, this is what the Dark One is doing. The Black Aja is doing their work, causing chaos amongst the Aes Sedai, both camps.
I also love the way it's descending from Dragon Mount, right? Not Sheol Ghul.
Uh-huh, yeah.
I think that's a really important distinction. They're like, at first glance, you're like, oh, it's from Sheol Ghul. And you're like, no. This is the dragon's place, not the Dark One's.
Right. It's evil, it's scary, it's chaotic. Is it the Dark One? Is it the Dark One?
Yeah, and I should clarify, I think earlier I was talking about the power of the dragon, but at this point, he really hasn't had his moment of epiphany, and there is a definite possibility that Rand will destroy the world from the peak of Dragon Mount.
I mean, from the peak of Dragon Mount, the doom of the entire world could flow like this wind, right? This is what we are risking, is that when Rand comes down from the mountaintop, it's a natural disaster descending at a ever-increasing speed. That could happen still. Rand has not yet decided to make the apple trees bloom.
Right. And then we get this sort of flashback recap with Susan. Suian Sanche.
Is it 2017 on this podcast?
Jesus Christ. You know what? We know brains, they make connections, and they don't unmake them very easily, all right? Once the connection's made, it's burned in there. Suian Sanche is absolutely awake for the second time. So there's like a backstory, sort of, like she was asleep, and then Egwene came to her in her dreams and basically said, hey, get your ass to Tel'aran'rhiod. Suian woke up, got an Angreal, went back to sleep, had the whole dream where she had like basically a conversation with Egwene, got the orders, and now she's waking up for the second time with the foul wind, having woken up once before and having had 2 conversations with Egwene.
Yeah, it's definitely reminding me of the Nightmare Folded Road Trip from book 1. It's definitely that kind of like, Robert, how many spirals did you pack into this thing? But yes, that is exactly what actually happened, what you said.
Yeah. So hopefully that, if anyone was confused, is exactly like what we're walking into at this point, that makes it clear. Because she sort of thinks about what happened as she's walking through the camp, but it takes a little bit of detective work to put it together.
Yeah, and she's basically letting us know that, like, it's been while we were with Egwene, right, in the prologue, while we were with her, in the meantime, the camp realized that, her boat had gotten overturned, that the harbor got closed.
Yes.
They got worried. They did the math. She didn't crawl up off the riverbank. They're starting to freak out. Like, all of that has been playing out while she was getting taken in and dealing with all the Aes Sedai. And Swan is like, okay, so now that everyone is sure she's dead because it's an icy river in the middle of winter, like, this is not a survivable thing. Like,
and an overturned boat,
like,
right?
Yeah, she's the Amerlin, but she can't get out of, like, the Willamette. You and I are both familiar with the Willamette. It's not a good river to fall in. So, like, middle of the night in the winter, like, it's not good. So she's very much trying to now come and, like, reverse course on that, right? Like, the momentum of the camp is fracturing because they think Egwene's dead.
Right. And she was the only thing that united them, especially those who had sworn oaths to her, right? And Suan is definitely questioning the strength of the oaths of, we call them the Saladar Six, right? Sheriam's group. And they ended up swearing to Egwene because Egwene caught them essentially sending the ferrets in, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And basically said, like, hey, you're going to be in a lot of trouble for doing this without the approval of the Hall. And so she got them to swear. But now these 6 who kind of swore against their will, it's not the most willing swearing I've ever seen. Well, now that Egwene's captured or dead, or, dead, they think that she's dead, they can just go off and do whatever they want. And so Suan is panicking, being like, I have to go in there and make sure they know that they can't break their oaths because Egwene is still in charge. She is still alive.
Yeah, and I mean, Bayonin takes this as her opportunity to leave, right? She leaves from the meeting before the news of Egwene being captured hits them. Because, she leaves. Beginning of chapter 2 is her leaving. And in this chapter, we see that she already decided she wanted to go to bed because there was nothing more to discuss. So Bayonin does take this opportunity to break that oath. And then, retcons even after Egwene confronts her. She's like, well, but you are captured, so it's not like I really broke it. But yeah, I mean, we see Matt and others talk about how, like, oaths given against your will don't count. Right? And Swan's like, yeah, oaths given under duress to a woman they think dead, like, that's gonna hold for as long as a snowball in hell. And she, disgraced former Amerlin of low power rank, is gonna have to go in there and try to convince them all to reverse course again on the strength of Egwene's, attenuated message. Like, I mean, yes, Teleran Riyadh is real. It's not like a prophetic dream in our world. We're like, I heard it in a dream, is like, not a valid political strategy. In this case, it is genuinely real communication, but it's still like power wielded at a distance through a woman of very low standing.
And she's definitely undercut by the ability. She can't say she met with her in Teleran Riyadh.
Also that, yeah.
Right? Because she can't admit to having the Angreal. So she has to basically be like, no, this was all conveyed to me through a dream. Which makes it very hard to be like, which honestly, I almost think it would be easier for her to be like, yeah, I didn't get that much detail. It was just a dream, right?
I don't know how much Egwene has really imparted on them the power of dream telegraph messages as opposed to Teleran Riyadh face-to-face Zoom meetings.
All right, so can you explain the title of this chapter? When Last Sounds.
Yeah, it's right near the end of the chapter. When Last Sounds is when they're all going to meet in the hall. Egwene has ordered them to all go into the dream and meet when last sounds, last just being an hour.
Oh, okay.
It's just one of the names of the hours because they have a very monk-like way of organizing time. Jordan has things like trine and last for naming of hours. So it's just a division of time. The only other thing before she gets to the Aes Sedai, really, I mean, there's the whole thing with her and the horse, but also like a moment of irritation at the whole Swan Bryn thing.
You find that irritating? I find it kind of romantic that she refuses to admit that she's in love with him. And like, why is he constantly on my mind? I don't know why I can't stand, why I'm keep thinking of this man. And it's like, because you love him and you won't admit it because you're stubborn. It's just a little cute.
That part's a little cute. I was thinking more of the pettiness with the boot blacking stuff and like.
Okay, yeah, I needed to ask about that. So like, is she cleaning his boots or ruining his work cleaning his boots?
She's ruining the work. She is ruining his boots in a fit of pettiness. And I just, like, this doesn't feel like love to me. This is just so childish and mean. And it just doesn't feel like a woman who was Pope, you know? She's Magic Pope, and now she's, like, ruining the man's shoes because he chose not to have her do the work. Like, I just... You don't have time to save dying people, but you have time to ruin his shoes.
If I had to defend it, if I had to say what I think Jordan's trying to do here, this is someone who grew up very quickly, right? First of all, she grew up poor, and then she was thrust into a place of authority, both as an Aes Sedai and then as an Amyrlin seat, and didn't get a chance to be a child. And now that she's been stilled and in a way reset into a place of forced non-authority, right? She does not have the one power. She can no longer be, in every interaction she has, she is the least important person in that interaction, right? According to whatever hierarchy she is. She now basically gets to act like a child again because she is, one, never got to do it, right? And then two, is sort of, in a lot of ways, a childish, less powerful person. And so I think he's trying to basically say, yes, this is someone who's acting childish, right? And that's because she never got to do it in the first place. And now that she's having a second childhood, she's getting away with it.
Maybe. I guess that kind of makes sense on paper, but I don't like it. Chat is agreeing with you, though. So I guess that makes sense.
I'm not saying I like it. I'm just saying I think that's what he's trying to do, is basically be this little like, hey, this person never got to have a childhood, so they're being childish now.
Yeah.
That she has the opportunity and got to be reset.
I like that better than women be like that as an explanation. I definitely like tapping into her specific backstory, both politically and personally, to explain it. I think that definitely does hold more water than just women are from Venus yet again.
Whereas Lyanna, right, she had an opportunity to reset, and she went with being flirty as her new personality. Right? She never really got an opportunity to be flirty, right?
Right, she does articulate that very clearly.
Yeah, and so Suian is obviously terrible at articulating that, but what is she doing that she never got to do?
Right, and Chat did point out that she was very prank prone when she was with Moraine, as, you know, the equivalent of a child in the Aes Sedai process. So, yeah, if you're talking about, reverting, if you're talking about reverting her, like, we are talking about reverting to her specifically, not just a generic woman, but like a very specific person's backstory. I still don't like it, but yeah, I don't like it in a different way. So,
well, happy to change your mind somehow, or at least in some way.
Yeah, it's, you know, now it's just like, well, I wish everyone was perfect, which is different.
And she also removes the blacking right after thinking he treated her like a maidservant, never so much as tried to kiss her, right? She's got this thought that she wants him to kiss her, and that A, pisses her off because she doesn't want to have that thought, right? And because she doesn't want to admit to herself that she wants him to kiss him. But B, she's really pissed off because he hasn't kissed her.
Yeah.
She is ruining his boots because the stupid man is putting it off and putting it off and putting it off and hasn't tried to kiss her yet.
I mean, hormones do make people very irrational. This is a fact.
Suian wants to get laid, and she's ruining his boots because she's sexually frustrated. That's my theory, and I'm going with it.
I am sure that is part of it. Certainly, that is what Jordan is writing.
Super Sky, like, Suan's blue boots.
She is like, sir, you may not keep your boots on.
The true reason why it's the blue Aja. They don't sleep with the warders, unlike the green Aja.
Yeah. Also, a little bit of annoyance for the fact that they seem to have a parent-Fail dynamic with the shouting and the mild physical abuse because it's hot or whatever, apparently.
It's Robert Jordan attempting to write flirting. It's all based on Harriet. I forbid what their flirting was like.
But they don't even have the excuse of being Saldean. This is an Andoran and a Tyran. Like, ugh. Anyway, horse acquisition. Swan has hilarious horse times. She is as much a hypocrite when it comes to horses as she is when it comes to men and romance. Her hilarious bad takes on horses as opposed to boats, mirror how she was just thinking about Bryn.
Right. And this is again Jordan trying to be funny or being funny, depending on your perspective.
I think it's hilarious the way she treats horses like boats and vice versa. It's hilarious.
And her being mistaken as novice when she's actually the former Armelin seat, Aes Sedai, right? And it's a good mirror of Egwene, right? Who is the Emerald seat and is mistaken for a novice.
Yeah. Swan and Egwene are very much foils for each other when it comes to showing us how the Aes Sedai hierarchy works, both in terms of the formal rules and the informal rules. But yeah, I am currently reading This Is How You Lose the Time War, and this whole Swan thing with the boats versus the horses, like, if you know, you know. I'm just seeing a parallel there.
Yeah, I haven't started yet, so I will have to.
I haven't finished it yet, but so my grandma really was not sure about it 100 pages in. She was like, or no, the first 50 pages, she was like, I don't know if I like this, but she was going to read it, the whole thing through for me. Our second chat at about 100 pages, she's like, okay, now I'm into it. So yeah, I have yet to finish it, but 2 more weeks. That's the pace our little book club goes at. But yeah, the boat versus horse thing definitely was reminding me of that.
Speaking of books you're reading, I'm reading The Fragile Threads of Power because it's narrated by Michael Kramer, Kate Redding, and also a third narrator, Marissa Kalin. And so it switches between 3 main characters, each of which has a different voice. So far, very much enjoying it. Very obviously Wheel of Time inspired. Like, there's some phrases in there where I'm like, is that you paying a little homage? But gotta say, interesting magic system. Like the characters so far. Definitely, a good chunk of the way through it. The plot feels a little thin to me, but I'm still withholding judgment, and I'll report back what I think. But so far, definitely an enjoyable read. So slightly before the horse thing.
Yeah?
There's a sentence here I wanted to talk about. She could offer her healing ability to the others. That was hardly her greatest skill, not very strong at all, though it seemed to have returned to her fully when Nynaeve healed her. Why does none of the rest of her skills come back fully except healing?
Do we know that none of her other skills came back? Does she have other, articulated specific skills?
As far as I know, everything else is she's just absolutely weak as fuck in everything else. She went from, one of the most powerful channelers in the White Tower's history pre, our current crop, right? It was like Codswain, her, and Moraine, right?
Yeah.
To barely unaccepted.
Yeah.
Except healing.
Well, see, I figured that because of what she said here, that it was hardly her greatest skill and not very strong at all. I figured it was just below the threshold of the power level she got healed back to. It literally took an amount of her power that was below what Nynaeve healed her to. But I hadn't really ever thought about it that hard.
Or is it something to do with the fact that Nynaeve is a healer and that she made that a priority, or something to do with the nature of healing? I like your theory that she's just such a bad healer, it didn't really matter what her power level was. I think that's actually a really good explanation. But I was contemplating a few other ones, but yeah, I like that.
I do see the appeal of Nynaeve kept the healing at maximum, but I don't think that's what happened. I think that Suan's just a really bad healer. But, you know, she could be like a battery, right? I mean, that's still a valuable healing thing.
Sure. Keith in chat is pointing out that she healed Matt. Although I do think that was less of a healing. She led the circle that healed Matt, I should say. I feel like that was less of a healing and more of a battle with the evil of Shadar Logoth. And that's something I think Suan is good at, is fighting.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Because she used Vora's Saw Angreal, I think, for that, plus a full circle. And
the way he was arching off and the way she was chanting, like, it felt more like an exorcism battle than any sort of healing. Like, it didn't feel much like I feel like the healing came after the separation of him with the dagger, right? And she handed that off to somebody else.
Or was just so powered up that even her weak ability, like, just, you know, did what you called from the TV show the pump and dump. Like, I've always kind of seen that as being how healing works. Like, if you just hit it with enough power, it just figures itself out. Which I don't know how true that is, but I think that that's how it is.
I mean, I think that's what the battlefield healing is. And I think that's why it's battlefield healing, because what if you want to do something that's not just let the body figure it out?
Right. Yeah, and also in the circle, too, with Suan, I mean, she could have passed off the healing to the literal yellows that were in the circle at the time. Like, but yeah, definitely doing battle with Eredhall seems more like an Amerlin thing than a healing yellow thing.
Right.
Because, yeah, you're basically doing a you shall not pass at that point.
So, yeah, back to Suan. She's riding through the camp. Why do saddles always seem harder than wood? Because you can't sit on one, right, Suan? Right? You take the weight with your legs, not with your butt.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, she rides awfully. She tries to, like, lean forward, and then, like, it gets scared by feeling off balance. So she just sits, like, upright as fuck while the horse is, like, running. Which, like, I have ridden a horse literally less than 10 times in my life. And I know that's not how you ride a horse.
Because it'll bounce you like a peg.
So badly. It's one of my favorite games is watching movies with horseback riding and spotting who is terrible at riding a horse and who's good at riding a horse. Because oftentimes the lead actor is terrible at riding a horse. And you can tell the extras are good at it. But like, I'm always like, ooh, look, a lead that's actually good at horseback riding. Because it's rare. It's rare.
I mean, it makes sense. The extras are only on screen because they're good at horseback riding.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We don't want them too good, or else it makes the lead look bad in comparison, right? I saw someone, they were making fun of musicals, and they're basically saying, like, when you have an actor as a singer versus someone who's a professional singer, and, like, you bring the two of them together, and you have this contrast where they're singing the same lines back and forth, and it's just a totally different skill level between one and the other.
Oh, my God. My heart broke in the most comical way for Russell Crowe in Les Mis. Like, that man was trying so hard. He was trying so hard. Bless his little heart. He's such a bad singer, but he tried so hard.
Dude, that'd be like me starring in a musical. Not a good idea.
It was such a bad call. He played Javert great, but, like, that's a powerful singing role, and Russell Crowe is not a singer.
Right. Any idea what the groom shouted after her?
No.
He says, I'd keep her to walk tonight, that wind, mind it, and all that stink. Well, she might just be a touch. I thought jumpy might be how he was going to finish that sentence, just like, and then somehow she's trying to say, he's going to be jumpy, or calm down, or what are you doing? Like,
yeah, take it on a walk.
Bitch, right? Like, yeah. Something. Yeah, just like,
something.
basically, like, I told you not to do that.
Exactly.
Like, yeah. And then, of course, she gets to the end, having ridden terribly, and goes, of course that fool animal tried to kill me.
It's like, well, first of all, it didn't. And second of all, you deserved it if it did.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, like the way she thinks about the horse in terms of physics, like for a horse going so fast, surely you have to pull hard on the reins to make it stop because, she just, for some reason, for some childish reason, can't get it through her head that boats and ships have different physics. She just refuses to use her logic brain that was noted in New Spring as being very logical to like understand anything about this, but it's hilarious comic relief anyway, so I don't mind. It's just funny.
It's and I think it's a great analogy for Egwene and Suan's leadership skills.
Sure.
Right? Suan thinks you need to, like, she doesn't see the people that she's in charge of as thinking beings. She sees them as ships, as she pulls this lever and the people go in that direction. And as long as that lever pull puts you in that direction, you're good to go. It doesn't matter that you're crushing somebody underneath it, right?
Wow. I think you're super right. He's overplaying this for the analogy.
Yeah, exactly. And Egwene is someone who could ride Bella and understands that there are people and understands that she can go in. And that's part of her strength of going into the tower is she can go in and convince these people to follow her. And rather than forcing them into a direction, right, she can lead them in that direction with gentle nudges on the reins, and they will follow her the way she goes. Because they're not a boat. They're thinking beings like a horse.
Even later in this chapter, we see Suian being very, like, pushing the horse away when the horse, like, wants pats on the nose. And likewise, when Egwene, like, rode Bella, right? Like, she gives Bella a hug and, like, tells her she's a good horse and, like, takes that extra second while sitting on her to be like, thank you for carrying me. Like, which, yeah, makes all the difference with smoothing down feathers and getting people to come to the table and think maybe you might be a good leader after all. If you just compliment them, if you give them a pat on the shoulder, the time of day, like... Oh my God, you're right. Suian did leadership like sailing.
In the way that the chair is always folding under for Egwene as her representation of the Amerlin seat, I think the swan horse ship analogy is a way to sort of talk about her leadership without actually saying anything about her leadership.
I love it.
And why she ended up stilled and deposed.
Yeah.
She sat upright on that throne and just got bounced up and down hard.
Yeah, a sudden squall came up and her technical skills were not enough to overcome. All right, so she gets to the camp.
Yeah, and these are mostly the Saladar 6. We've talked about them before.
Wow, Lilligen. She got spanked by the chair. I just...
True.
Wow.
Yeah.
You can go see yourself out, but leave us art first before you go.
Oh, why do you think... Okay, she inverts her weaves and also hides her ability to channel. Do you think that helps her at all? Do you think it avoids, like, Arengar's attention? I'm just curious why he points that out, because it doesn't seem to really affect anything. Or is that just, like, the level of paranoia she's at?
I figured it was to avoid being targeted by whoever's been mysteriously killing sisters, because if this message she has doesn't get to its intended destination, everything falls apart. And this person hasn't been killing random women. He's been killing Aes Sedai. So if she's not detectable as an Aes Sedai and has her hood up, maybe she'll be able to pass off as just a wife or whatever and not be a target.
Right, right.
On her way through to the actual meeting, I just want to point out that Morvran's tent would be big enough for a meeting if there was room among all the books the Brown had managed to acquire on the march. Morvran has literally become a bookish pack rat on a war march. She's like, yeah, no one can have a meeting in my tent. I literally have a traveling library that I didn't have when we started. Like, legendary Brown behavior.
I did want to point out a mention of Shiriam's Arenvar. That's her warder. Not a lot of resolution about what happens to him, right? I don't even know if he's a dark friend, to be perfectly honest. He gets put in that camp, right, where they round up all the sisters and execute them. And then there's that, like, group of warders who they have. They don't know if they're dark friends or not, so I think she ends up just basically throwing them on the front lines to die.
I believe that's what happens, yeah, because they can't sort them out because they're all in a murderous death rage. And so she's like, well, if they're dark friends, they won't want to go fight in the front lines. So that answers that question. But if they were good guys and they just got caught up by a bad Aes Sedai, then cannon fodder.
So that's kind of my assumption of what happened to Arenvar, is he became cannon fodder in the last battle. Some front line, Trolloc cut him down.
That's a bummer, because that means that he was not a dark friend.
There's just so few mentions of him, I just had to, like, bring up his fate, because it's like he's mentioned like twice, and I'm like, oh, Shiriam does have a warder, right? And we just don't know if he's a dark friend or not.
That's a bummer. Yeah, I was noticing that in this chapter we have a lot of warders getting mentioned that I don't recognize their names really as coming up again. Like, this is a scene where you get lots and lots of just random extra character number 47, random warder number 13.
Yeah, especially I'm looking at the chronology of these, and it's like, you know, Bruin mentioned in Lord of Chaos in this chapter, and then once again in...
Yeah. Nobody remembers the bodyguards.
No. So Suian, basically, she tries to listen in. She gets to the tent, right? She tries to listen in, and then she goes inside and gets called out for trying to listen in. I kind of like that.
I thought those were two different tents. I'm so confused about this tent thing. Because it says she rides on. Like, she rode the rest of the way wondering what they had been talking about. And I'm like, so that implies she rides to a different tent? But then later it's like, and I don't want people listening to me. I'm really confused. It feels like there's 1.5 tents.
She rides past Shiriam and Morven's dark tents, but stops at Myrell's. So Myrell had 2 peak tents in the camp, one for herself and one for her 3 warders.
Yeah, her own shone brightly. And then what were they talking about inside? Her waves touched the tent. And then she rode the rest of the way. The rest of the way where? To another tent, right? I guess she was just spying when it was a long way away from her, and then she rode the rest of the way towards it?
Oh, okay, so here's the thing. In the previous paragraph, her third choice provided a catch. That's the third tent. And she reined in Night Lily well short of it. Right? So she's pretty far away at that point. Then she's looking at these 2 peak tents. From far away, she tries to listen in. And then she rides up the rest of the way once her probe is thwarted.
All right. I just was not connecting those dots quite right.
Yeah. It's not that... It's a little confusingly written, but yes. The rest of the way refers to the fact that she just stopped short of the tent and didn't quite ride all the way up to it. Basically, she could see it in the distance and went, I'm going to go try and spy on them before I get close and the warders challenge me. And then she gets rebuffed, rides up the rest of the way, goes inside, and they go, so it was you trying to listen.
Right,
in.
which, to return to your point, like, with the subtlety, Swan.
Yeah. like you're going inside right after that, right? Like, and admittedly, the ward was inverted, so she probably thought she could get away with it because she didn't see the ward.
But it was also, like, on a small chance that they wouldn't have done an inverted ward, because she knows they know how to invert wards. Like,
right.
Was it so worth it?
I think he's just trying to point out that inverted wards are now pretty common all across this is now a technology that's spread across the rebel camp.
We're in an encryption arms race now.
Yep. A new technology arms race, really. Which you need to do to get to the last battle, right? You need everybody to learn all these new weaves so they can use them in the final fight.
All right, so we go in, we see the Aes Sedai, which is Myrell, Shiriam, Carlinia, and Morvran. We have this whole thing about Swan needing to comb her hair and then deciding not to comb her hair. That's very...
Cutting it, I thought. Because she's like, I want my hair short, but Gareth Bryn likes it long, so I'm going to leave it long.
Yeah, Morvran literally gives her a comb and is like, you look all windblown. You have to comb your hair. And then after a while, Swan's like, I can't seem dignified while I'm combing my hair. I'm just going to have to be tousled. And I'm just like, literally, a male general would never have these thoughts while giving a war report.
No, because I'm bald as hell, right? So
it's just silly human hierarchy things.
So basically, Egwene orders no rescue attempt because there'd be a battle. She doesn't want Aes Sedai dying at Aes Sedai hands. I don't think she counts Black Ajah among that.
Well, they're forfeit.
Yeah, but this wouldn't be necessarily Black Ajah fighting and dying. These would be 2 just sitters or sisters of the tower fighting and dying.
Right. Be friendly fire, effectively. Oh, there's this other line here that gets into your leadership thing again. So she asked where Bannon and Nisau are, and, they've both left. And here's this line. In Swan's opinion, these women had never stopped believing they might still guide events somehow, even after the rudder had long since been taken from their hands. Like, that is Swan. Swan still believes she can guide events.
Yep.
She doesn't believe the rudder's been taken from her hands. And it's just...
Nope.
Yes, you are very right about that analogy. It's just very much what he's hammering on. But yeah, Shiriam, the Dark Friend, is very, 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 very interested in rescuing Egwene, using traveling, in creating this sister killing sister thing, and creating this nowhere is safe from traveling thing. Shiriam is so guns a-blazing ready to just pull this pin.
Also, she wants the Amyrlin back under her thumb.
Well, she's been threatened what happens if she isn't in control of the Amyrlin. There's a lot of Dark Friend reasons pushing Shiriam's reactions here.
She talks about the Aes Sedai killing Aes Sedai happening once, I assume she's talking about the day Suian was brought down.
I assumed so, yeah. Yeah. Like, I'm assuming that's not some reference to ancient history. I'm assuming that is specifically what got us into this mess in the first place that we're talking about. Like, that was the inciting incident. We cannot be recycling the inciting incident in this plot. So
the Six don't really understand why Egwene wouldn't be put on trial. They're, I don't really have much else to say about that part of the meeting.
The thing I noted really, I mean, I highlighted a lot because that's how I am. But yeah, they don't get it. And the thing that I thought was interesting is this quote: "If she is not to be tried, then without any doubt she is to be broken. She has proven to be a stronger woman than I took her for at first, but no one is strong enough to resist the White Tower when it decides to break her." And my response to that is, she is the Tower. And that's why the Tower can't break her, is because she is more the Tower than all the rest of them combined. And she will prove it when she mind fucks Masana. When she mind breaks Masana, when she blanks Masana as a person out of existence with how much she is the Tower. Like, yeah, any normal woman would be broken, but this is the Tower condensed into a woman, so it's different.
Trained by the Aiel.
Oh my god, she's got, like, not just a spine of steel, but every single bone is made of steel.
So in comes Lelaine.
Yes, Lelaine the Blue.
Lelaine of Romaine.
Yes, yes, the second half of Romaine.
And she basically says, and there's a lot here that she says, but essentially she's saying, listen, you need to support me because you really don't want Ramonda on the throne. And you really don't want a civil war if Egwene does end up dying. So you need to take basically a side, and we'll do it all in Egwene's name. And if she comes back, she'll be Amerlin's seat. But on our fight, you got to take a side so that if Egwene dies, we're not stuck in a civil war inside a civil war. We will not survive as rebels if that happens.
Well, she doesn't come into the tent and say that. She comes into the tent for some fucking reason and then snags Swan and has this private talk with Swan and is like, you and all of your little networks are going to do that for me. And it's super, like, sketchy, but I don't even know why she entered the tent in the first. Oh, of course, because this is the leadership council getting together in the aftermath of Egwene dying. Lelaine's absolutely going to be part of it. And then she just pivots on a dime when Swan delivers her news.
She says why she's there. She says, I thought that horse outside was the same I saw you ride in on, Suan. She ducks into the tent because Suan's horse is tied up outside.
Oh, she's
just like, I'm here to get you. Like, I saw your horse. Come walk with me.
Yeah. So yeah, immediately yoinks Swan out and effectively, in Swan's mind, prevents her from cementing Egwene's orders with the others. And then, yeah, does this very threatening, we're gonna be friends routine. And we get, at this point, we learn about how, like, she did, in fact, basically kidnap Faelain and, like, press all the information out of her because Swan had been like, what the fuck's up with Faelain? And now we know. We're getting it spelled out. This is what was up with Faelain.
I think we did reference this chapter when we were talking about Faelain's weird behavior. I think we looked it up and figured it out. But yes, this is why Faelain was being weird and disappearing. And she's essentially spilled the beans about all the stuff that Egwene was doing to Lelaine, which would be a real problem for Egwene if Egwene hadn't gotten kidnapped.
Right. Yeah, she is one half step ahead of disaster with that one.
Yeah. There is, I do feel like Jordan set it up that way. Just like, okay, this is about to collapse under her, but now I'm going to push her over there. And then these problems can't come up.
Yeah. And we get a reminder, too, of, like, the fact that Faelain and Theodrin aren't considered real Aes Sedai. Lelaine's like, oh, yeah, I treated her in a way that's super inappropriate if she was a real sister, but she's not, which, again, is, like, a super annoying dig at Egwene's power, right? To say, oh, yeah, not really, though. I get to choose which of your decrees I acknowledge or not. And then says, oh, she'll be a fine Aes Sedai. I mean, she's totally super well set up to be an Aes Sedai. She just isn't one yet.
Remind me again, it was Nicola who betrayed Egwene, right?
Well, I was going to ask you about that because Swan, says here that the certainty of betrayal is the result of the Hall being the only people who knew about the plot. So...
Except the women involved,
right.
She says. And Nicola was involved.
No, she was...
Well, she was involved in making Quendiar.
Yeah, that's it. That's the extent. So, but But her and Arena are notorious for ferreting out information they're not supposed to have. Notorious. So maybe being part of the Quaindiar alone was enough clue.
And don't forget, Egwene was an accidental snatch.
Right.
They just showed up to stop the chains from being turned. So it's, being like, hey, there's a bunch of people practicing to turn things to Quaindiar. Hey, Nicola wanders around, is like, what are we doing this for? And someone's like, we're gonna block the harbor. Nobody
told her that directly. I guarantee you not. But I bet that Arena managed to hear a snatch of conversation by being sneaky or catch a document or something. Because they're just notorious for that. Because I think nobody in the hall is a good candidate for having actually done the betrayal. Nicola is. And so Swan's assertion that nobody outside of the hall knew just has to be wrong because Arena is a rogue.
Also, Nicola just went, we basically saw in the last chapter she admitted to betraying Egwene.
Yeah.
Right? Because she thought it would get her ahead.
Yeah, so again, Swan's just wrong. But again, Swan sees the world in a series of boat maneuvers, not as a horse herd. Nicola is that one horse that just will not behave.
I'm just doing a quick bit of reading. Yeah, so basically, Halima wouldn't work because she doesn't want to lose her. She definitely killed the people who were using Quaindiar, who were good Quaindiar users, but I think that was a coincidence.
I always assumed that it was somehow on purpose because of the Quaindiar skill, but I guess I don't know why. It's just too goddamn convenient otherwise.
I guess, yeah, she could have killed them to stop the plan from going forward, not realizing that she was going to send Egwene into the...
Nobody could have anticipated that.
Right. We know why Faelaine was certainly a suspect, right? But now we know why she disappeared. Right.
Yeah, she has a watertight alibi.
Lelaine actually has a pretty good... she could have betrayed them.
Except she's a blue and is hell-bent on taking down Elida specifically. So, as the Swan points out at the end of this chapter, she didn't have a reason. She kind of does now, but she didn't.
Mm-hmm. It could also be a Nicola foretelling.
And the Magic Island will be cock-blocked?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
No, yeah, Keith's agreeing with you that the Quaindiar skill's death was a coincidence. Yeah, I guess it is just a really... really unfortunate coincidence that very rare skill happened to be women that Cabriana and McCandless knew. The real reason that those three were so close was because they had an affinity for Earth.
Keith is saying, and this is what I remember this, Celine was killing the friends of the Aes Sedai who knew she...
Yep.
Did you say all that? And I totally was reading when you said it. Awesome. That's why you were yepping me. Gotcha. Okay. I can't read and listen at the same time. Sorry about that.
The number of times I've had to stop the podcast I'm listening to because an interesting article just came across my social media feed.
It's so funny. There's things you can do at the same time. Reading and listening to words I can't do. It's using the same part of my brain.
There's certain kinds of music I can't listen to while working on stuff. And then other kinds of music, it's fine. Just depends on the frequencies and kinds of instrumentation. Vuji said also doing two languages at the same time is impossible. And yet translators exist. Translators exist. They're incredible.
Yeah, I feel like you have to hold this third ideal of what they said separate from the languages.
Right. And so I did take ASL briefly in college for 6 months. And the syntax for ASL is actually based on French, which means it's backwards from English in terms of sentence structure, the object, subject, verb, it's backwards. So if you're translating between English and ASL, you have to effectively wait for the end of the statement before you can start translating it. Not that I ever got to the point of translating it, but I've watched people do translation and attempted to keep up with where their brains are at, and I can't. It's like trying to watch a sewing machine. It's just it's magic. It's just magic.
I feel the same way about court transcribers.
Totally. Yeah. Anyone who can do that listen and output of the same type of content, running it through a filter in the head, you are in fact superhuman. You are in fact a superhuman, and I am in awe.
With the time delay. I don't have a lot about what Lelaine says. She's just re-summarizing up the things that Suan already thought and already told the hall. Now we're kind of getting them for a third time.
Yeah, again, it's still kind of recap territory. This is some very intricate political stuff we have to be reminded of. But yeah, basically, Lelaine finds it hilarious that they're all going to meet in the hall under Elida's nose. They're going to literally go to the hall of the tower in Tal Iran Riyadh and meet, like, truly delicious irony. And yeah, that's where the line is when last sounds, because that's the time for it. And yeah, she doubts that Egwene is correctly reading the situation in the tower. She's very like, what could Egwene possibly know? Surely Aes Sedai wouldn't be as foolish as to fracture into warring camps and be easily broken from the inside out. That would be ridiculous.
Yeah, you're almost on your way to do that in the rebel camp, so...
Right. Yeah, someone in chat earlier was saying, like, it's really ironic how identical the two camps are, truly. Like, the only difference is that the rebel camp has a slightly more coherent enemy to point at, but, like... the fracturing is the same. And so, yeah, it's, the blind leading the blind for Lelaine to say, I don't think Egwene knows what she's doing. Yeah. So Suan thinks about how they really have to stay focused on what Egwene said, not what Egwene might have said or might have meant, because ambiguity is where disobedience will come from. And there's definitely a bit of, again, this is Suan trying to assert Egwene's power. Suan is trying to dominate Lelaine on Egwene's behalf while also displaying subservience as Suan, right? She has to be both. And that is, I mean, she complains to Egwene later, like, this is not a balancing act I can sustain. And like, you see it here already. She's trying to not slouch so that she'll be shorter than Lelaine, because that's who she's supposed to be as a lower ranked blue. But she's also trying to tell this ambitious as fuck woman to fucking cool it down and keep it in her pants on behalf of the Amerlin. Like, that's a really difficult tension. And yeah, she says, perhaps she will explain how she believes she can hold out if Elida orders her broken. I would very much like to hear that. Like, sarcastic, disbelieving, and yeah, it's like, better than you, Lelaine. That's the answer. Significantly better than you, who think you're better than her.
I think that takes us to the readout.
Yeah, that at 59 minutes, that takes us to the readout. Who are we?
It's a short chapter.
Yeah, so Suan asks, then what are you asking me to be faithful to you about? Instead of answering, Lelaine resumed her slow walk through the moonlight, carefully adjusting her shawl. Burin followed her, a half-invisible lion in the night. Suan hurried to catch up, tugging Night Lily after her, fending off the fool mare's attempts to nuzzle her hand again. Egwene Alvir is the lawful Amerlin seat, Lelaine said finally, until she dies, or is stilled. Should either happen, we would be back to Ramonda trying for the staff and the stole, and me forestalling her. She snorted. That woman would be a disaster as bad as Elida. Unfortunately, she had enough support to forestall me as well. We'd be back to that, except that if Egwene dies or is stilled, you and your friends will be as faithful to me as you've been to Egwene, and you will help me gain the Amerlin seat in spite of Ramonda. Suan felt as though her stomach had turned to ice. No blue would have been behind the first betrayal, but one blue, at least, had reason to betray Egwene now.
Not that Lelaine ever betrays Egwene, really.
No, she doesn't. She doesn't. But that is a threat hanging over Suan for the entire rest of the division.
She's always trying to get Egwene to come back.
Yeah, for this exact reason. Because at some point, Lelaine is going to betray her, and it's just a matter of time. And every minute that it doesn't happen increases the odds that the next minute will be when it does happen. Yeah, I find the political tug-of-war between Ramonda and Lelaine just very, just like in our real-world politics. It's like, maybe your system is shit if the best we have is two old people duking it out for something that nobody actually wants. Maybe the entire system needs to be rethought from the ground up. Maybe neither Ramonda or Lelaine are anywhere near qualified to be in charge of what's happening now at the end of the world.
Upper age limits on Aes Sedai?
I'm just saying, when the world is on fire and all the standards for what has come before don't seem to apply anymore, maybe we need a changing of the guard.
I'm sorry, you're 200. It's time to retire into the kin.
I just, I just would like to see some fresh faces.
But yeah, that was a fun sort of way to get back into it.
I am so happy. I am so happy to be doing Knife of Dreams. I'm so happy to just be doing a normal chapter. And just everything's chill and at baseline. And this is a happy place. This is very cozy.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like I discovered something fun in today's, like, I discovered the ship analogy for Suian's leadership, and it's like, okay, I feel back to discovering fun things in every chapter we read.
Yeah.
And good analogies, as opposed to Jordan's just like, this happened, then this happened, then that happened.
Yeah, it's starting to all pull back together, and we're getting some real good payoffs.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Yeah, this February, this winter has been kind of just meh. Me and everyone I know, we're just all feeling a little meh, and this is definitely providing a nice, happy medium to be at.
Definitely. Well, that was fun. It's fun, sweet, and short. That's we haven't done a short one that short in a long time. So
no, editing already is so pleased.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or
support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?